Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Welcome to Sekhet Maat's discussion of the Star Sapphire Ritual. I am Frater Museus, and my goal by the end of this discussion is to help prepare everyone to perform the Star Sapphire on their own. For the duration of the COVID-19 pandemic and quarantine, I have been performing the Star Ruby alongside the Star Sapphire as a combined daily practice. You will notice that Crowley leaves most of his instructions for this ritual pretty vague, and as a result, this can be pretty tough for most of us to decipher. A big part of why I wanted to present all of this information was to try to help all of you get past the first few hurdles that for a long time kept me from actually being able to perform this ritual at all. We will begin by examining the symbolism in an attempt to help everyone get past these first few hurdles. So for those of you who are not familiar, the Star Sapphire Ritual is a Class D publication, first published as Chapter 36 in the Book of Lies, along with its sister ritual, Chapter 25, the Star Ruby. This is my copy of the reproduction of the original printing of the Book of Lies from keepsilence.org. I also have the newer version. The Keep Silence one here doesn't have the commentary because that wasn't printed till later in life. And so with the introduction out of the way, let's begin by just reading the actual ritual itself. Let the adept be armed with his magic rood and provided with his mystic rose. In the center, let him give the LVX signs, or if he know them, if he will and dare do them, and can keep silent about them, the signs of NOX, being the signs of puer, ver, puella, and mulier. Omit the sign IR. Then let him advance to the east and make the holy hexagram, saying, Pater et Mater unus Deus aurarita. Let him go around to the south and make the holy hexagram and say, Mater et Filius unus Deus aurarita. Let him go around to the west, make the holy hexagram and say, Filius et Filia unus Deus aurarita. Let him go around to the north and make the holy hexagram and then say, Filia et Pater unus Deus aurarita. Let him then return to the center, and so to the center of all, making the rosy cross as he may know how, saying, Aurarita, Aurarita, Aurarita. In this, the signs shall be those of Set triumphant and of Baphomet. Also shall Set appear in the circle, let him drink of the sacrament and let him communicate the same. Then let him say, Omnia in duos, duo in unum, unas in nihil. Haec nec quator, nec omnia, nec duo, nec unas, nec nihil sunt. Gloria Patri et Matri, et Filio et Filiae, et Spiritui Sancto externo, et Spiritui Sancto interno. Uterat est erit in secula seculorum, sex in uno, per nomen septum in uno, aurarita. Let him then repeat the signs of LVX, but not the signs of NOX, for it is not he that shall arise in the sign of Isis rejoicing. Okay, so anybody who is just either seeing this, reading it, or hearing it for the first time is probably, having the same response that I did, which is like, what the did I just read? But you guys can probably see here that Crowley made some interesting choices. You can either do the LVX or the NOX signs. And this isn't completely obvious, but there's some clue as to what he means by will and dare do them and can keep silent about them. So from my understanding, this is essentially meant to imply that the NOX signs are reserved for those who have crossed the abyss. Otherwise, and for our purposes today, you're going to want to stick to the LVX signs. And I have a couple of different diagrams here I found online. So the next thing that I wanted to go over is his mention of this holy hexagram. He never quite says exactly what the holy hexagram is. But if you go to chapter 69 in the Book of Lies, you're going to come across the way to succeed and the way to suck eggs, which starts off literally with, "This is the holy hexagram." And this entire thing seems to kind of go on and explain what exactly that is. This is the holy hexagram. Plunge from the height, O God, and interlock with man. Plunge from the height, O man, and interlock with beast. The red triangle is the descending tongue of grace. The blue triangle is the ascending tongue of prayer. The interchange, the double gift of tongues, the word of double power, abra hadabra, is the sign of the great work. For the great work is accomplished in silence. And behold, is not that word equal to Keth? That is Cancer, whose sigil is the sigil of Pisces. This work also eats up itself, accomplishes its own end, nourishes the worker, leaves no seed, is perfect in itself. Little children, love one another. So, does anyone have any idea like what exactly he's talking about here with this holy hexagram? I'll give you a clue. It's not on the screen yet, but there's some pretty cool commentary to this in the Book of Lies, like the later editions. There's that.
I think the big clue lies in the number of the chapter.
Indeed. So, the key to the understanding of this chapter is given in the number and the title, the former being intelligible to all nations who imply Arabic figures, the latter only to experts in deciphering English puns. The chapter alludes to Levet's drawing of the hexagram and is a criticism of or an improvement upon it. In the ordinary hexagram, the hexagram of nature, the red triangle is upwards, like fire, and the blue triangle downwards, like water. In the magical hexagram, this is reversed. The descending red triangle is that of Horus, a sign specially revealed by him personally at the equinox of the gods. It is the flame descending upon the altar and licking up the burnt offering. The blue triangle represents the aspiration, since blue is the color of devotion, and the triangle, kinetically considered, is the symbol of directed force. In the first 3 paragraphs, this formation of the hexagram is explained. It is a symbol of the mutual separation of the holy guardian angel and his client. In the interlocking is indicated the completion of the work. So there you have it in pretty plain English. Paragraph 4 explains in slightly different language what we have said above, and the scriptural image of tongues is introduced. In paragraph 5, the symbolism of tongues is further developed. Abrahadabra is our primal example of an interlocked word. We assume that the reader has thoroughly studied that word in Liber D, etc. The sigil of Cancer links up this symbolism with the number of the chapter. The remaining paragraphs continue the Gallic symbolism. So when you look at the previous hexagram rituals that you work with, you know, the lesser ritual of the hexagram, you have all these different, you know, fire, earth, air, water, invoking, banishing, all these different hexagrams that you would employ. But when you really look at what's being described here, really only the earth hexagram fits that description. So here we have it on the screen. You know, on the left here is the hexagram of nature as described. And then the holy hexagram, you know, the red triangle descending and the blue, it's reversed. This is technically, what we're going to be doing here in that quarters section, in that first section of Latin where you advance to the east and then, continue, that is that's kind of like you're calling your quarters there, this section of that ritual. And this difference implies something. So those of you familiar with the Star Ruby will probably, be familiar with this idea of its placement on the tree of life, right? And that ritual I've always heard is centered on Tippereth. But when you do the Star Sapphire, I guess it's more so intended to actually center on the abyss, which I think combined with the description of the holy hexagram and the chapter explaining it, chapter 69 of the Book of Lies, gives a really cool indication as to what is really going on in this ritual. So here we have the quarters. Let's go over this. So you advance first to the east, Pater et Mater unus Deus aurarita. And the way I like to do this is always simultaneously. So Pater et Mater, then you're to point to the center of this hexagram you're making in the air and say, Unus Deus aurarita. And kind of what we're doing here is we're asserting unity between the different aspects of Tetragrammaton, right? So here I have the translation. Pater et Mater unus Deus aurarita literally means the Father and Mother are the one God, aurarita. Is everyone here familiar with aurarita? That's I have it written down. I don't actually remember what it stands for. If anyone does, feel free.
It stands for one is thy beginning, one is thy spirit, and thy permutation one.
Awesome. Thank you. So, what we're doing here is we're going through the four directions and we're asserting unity, kind of around the abyss, surrounding it on the tree of life with all of its different components. And what you do is you come all the way back to the beginning and it becomes, daughter and father are the one God, aurarita. So when you do this, you're going to be making a shape kind of almost seemingly unintentionally with your feet, right? But you start in the center and you advance to the east. Then you go around and you keep going around so that when you're done, you return to the center. And as Crowley says in the ritual, and so to the center of all, right? And as we stated, this ritual is centered on the abyss. So this is a pretty significant little piece of magic. As we stated already, the only hexagram that really fits the description from the lesser ritual of the hexagram is the hexagram of earth. And so you have this symbolism here of earth kind of centering on the abyss, right? This is not just a simple earth invocation. This is an invocation of the holy guardian angel. And as was stated, I'll go back a few slides here. Here it is. In the way to succeed and the way to suck eggs, right? This is essentially perfectly described. Let's go to the commentary. So yeah, God descends, right, and combines with man. Man descends and combines with beast. The blue triangle is this symbol of your aspiration, right? You're aspiring to knowledge and conversation with your holy guardian angel. So yeah, this is a pretty interesting little ritual. And as I was saying earlier, I combine it usually with the Star Ruby. So I'm starting down here around Tippereth. And then I'm moving up to, essentially standing on the edge of the abyss when I do the Star Sapphire Ritual. And this is something I actually do right now every day. And so there's some significance to this circle and a cross here. You'll find it in the Book of the Law, right? But there's a name for this in the old Golden Dawn school of magic, and that was actually the Rosy Cross. And this was symbolic of the rose on the cross, and that whole version of what is essentially another rendition of the Tree of Life. But the other version of the Rosy Cross, as in the one that we will be drawing, many of us choose to interpret this to mean the unicursal hexagram, right? So even though you're making the sun wheel, right, with your steps, the circle with the cross, you're also kind of expected to draw a symbol. And so what I did here is I actually just mapped out really quickly how you go about drawing a unicursal hexagram. Because that's part of this ritual. So you're making the Rosy Cross, as you may know how. From what I've read, this is one of the interpretations as to what that symbol means in the new Aeon. Okay, so moving forward, the signs shall be those of Set triumphant and of Baphomet. Also, shall Set appear in the circle, let him drink of the sacrament, and let him communicate the same. Right, and here I think there's some more illusions going on, and there's this weird thing that Crowley's doing, where he's playing with an unusual symbol for Thelema, which is that of the god Set. Right, we work with Horus quite a bit, but very, very, very rarely do you ever see Crowley really pulling Set out. Right. And Set has always been equated with the deity of Typhon in the Greek system. Set, or Seth, is sort of his Egyptian counterpart. And so you'll see them referred to a lot as Set-Typhon. And largely in occult circles, they're kind of understood to be the same entity. So what you end up with here is, there's a couple of signs that really do seem to correlate directly to Set, right, or to Typhon. And specifically here we have this Apophis Typhon trident symbol, right, from the NOx signs, or the LBX, right? The next thing that you notice is he talks about omitting the sign IR, because it is not you who arises in the sign of Isis rejoicing. And I think this is the point in the ritual where that holy guardian angel is kind of meant to descend into you, and you are kind of seeking to join together. And so it's not that you don't do this sign in the ritual, it's that you don't do it alone. You do it once you have combined. So really it can be understood as the holy guardian angel acting through you. They are giving the sign of Isis rejoicing, or Set triumphant, as it's referred to here. The other thing is this sign of Baphomet. I think it was in 777 that I found a direct correlation between Moulier and Baphomet. Otherwise, I'm really not even positive how you are supposed to come to that conclusion, but I have seen quite a few other teachers kind of describe this. And the main thing being that it's the shape of a cup, right? And so we a lot of the time we associate this with Babylon, and with the cup of Babylon, or the Grail, which also would have a lot to do with the abyss, right? Which is where this ritual takes place. And so Moulier.
I've always interpreted it the sign of Baphomet as being more the sign of Veer, and
Right, me too.
Baphomet. That's how I've always personally interpreted that.
Gotcha. And that's actually exactly what I was talking about when I said that a lot of this is open to interpretation. So, what this ritual is really cool for is it makes you look around and it really makes you dig for some answers. And, I'm going to try that because I haven't actually used the veer. But that was my initial thought when I thought of Baphomet. It was actually David Shoemaker, I think, who I found describing it as Moulier. And that made sense to me too as the cup, in especially the sense that there's the shall Set appear in the circle, let him, drink of the sacrament. And I thought that that implied a cup as well. Um, so a lot of people will perform this ritual with just their bare hands, but I I think it's really written for a wand. I've always felt this was meant for a wand and a cup. And at this point in the ritual, if you're using a cup, it would be kind of the moment where you would symbolically drink from it, right? What I do, this is my interpretation of this, is I arise in the sign of Isis rejoicing. And this is where I speak the body, what I call the body of the ritual. Um, Omnia in duos, duo in unum, unus in nihil, haec nec quator, nec omnia, nec duo, nec unus, nec nihil sunt. Gloria Patri et Matri et Filio et Filia et Spiritui Sancto externo et Spiritui Sancto interno. Uterat esterit in secula seculorum, sex in uno, per nomen septem in uno, a rarita. Right? Which translates as all in two, two in one in nothing. These are not four, nor all, nor two, nor one, nor nothing. Glory be to the Father and to the Mother and to the Son and the Daughter, and to the Holy Spirit without and within, which was, is, and shall be, world without end, six in one, through the names of the seven in one Ararita. So you're going to notice that because this ritual is kind of centered on the abyss, there's this drawing down, while simultaneously reaching up for that supernal triad, those first three emanations, on the tree of life. And you're really, encouraging those energies to descend into you. And you're kind of also standing on your lower nature, so to speak. And you're really trying to create unity all through the system with yourself and your God. And so something that isn't entirely obvious is what is this symbolism of Set in this ritual? And I think that what Crowley was really trying to draw attention to is actually Horus, right? Anyone familiar with his work is like, what the hell? Where's Horus? What is Set doing here? Um, and this supernal triad, it is above the abyss, which means it is above duality. Anything that exists above the abyss is going to be one. It is not going to be binary. So the idea there is kind of a complicated thought, but Set would therefore sort of then contain Horus within himself, as they are sort of ritually opposites in most of Egyptian magic. I guess that can be debated, or you can understand it kind of as Horus and Osiris are also one, because a lot of people would say, more so Osiris and Set are opposites. But really, I guess, especially for our purposes, Set works really well as an opposite to Horus. And so what's going on here with this symbolism? What are we, we're talking about the holy guardian angel. So what is Set doing here? Set is also sort of symbolic of a lower nature, right? And he talks about man descends and unites with beast. God descends and unites with man, right? And there's this idea of descending energies on this tree of life in this ritual. And so this is a Kabbalistic spelling for Set that was given by Crowley, and I like this a lot for its symbolism. And what you have here is this, what we know as a C, In this instance is actually symbolic of a sigma, right, which is an old Greek letter. Um, and then we have, the traditional glyph here for Sol, the sun. And in this, that's actually an archaic form of a theta. All right. And so what you have is Set here is spelled sigma theta. Or you have a glyph for a crescent moon combining with a sun, right? So Sol in Luna, there's this, again, this unity. You assert unity between the four parts of the tetragrammaton, as you're moving up the tree of life, um, and you're simultaneously reaching for it while you're asking it to reach for you. The symbolism, I think, is really to solidify that HGA. And in a lot of Crowley's work, the HGA is symbolized by Horus. And in this instance, it's symbolized by Set. Um, that's just kind of a weird thing that he doesn't do in a lot of rituals. But in this one, he really wanted to make you think about things by virtue of their opposites, right? Because you're trying to transcend that ritually and achieve this oneness with your holy guardian angel. So this ritual then ends, right, with you don't do the NOx signs, even if you did them at the beginning, right? He says very clearly that you are to end on LVX. And go in silence is just kind of how I think every thelemic ritual really ends. But let's get back to these signs and interpreting this a little bit for ourselves. I've always interpreted the signs to be done sort of like this. I get to the center again after asserting unity with tetragrammaton and the four cardinal directions, and I draw a unicursal hexagram in the air, as I showed earlier. Point to the center, and I, say Ararita. This is where I usually give my sign of the trident. And I think of that as reaching upward, aspiring to the HGA, but also symbolically seeing my arms as that descending red triangle, right? And so the HGA can descend into you. That is where I then go to Mulier and become the cup. And with each of these, I say Ararita. And he says there's these three Ararita, Ararita, Ararita. You can do that however you'd like, whatever feels right for you. This is just my interpretation of it. But that's kind of the beauty of this ritual is, he's making you think of the symbolism. And so there's really infinite combinations and infinite ways that you can interpret it. You just want to make sure that, it lines up with the symbolism and your understanding, right? Yeah, next week, we'll actually try to do a practical lesson in the ritual.
Cool. Thanks, Duffy.
No problem. Thank you guys for sticking that out with me. And
great class, brother.
Thank you. Yeah, 93, everyone.